I'm Lisa, and stepping into that party was the last place I thought my world would turn. There I stood beside Rachel, anticipating some laughter and free drinks. It all changed with a glance from James, his easy smile and hands casually tucked into his jeans. "Who's that?" I nudged Rachel, eyeing him. "That's James," she half shouted over the music. "Went to college with him. Real chill guy. You want to meet him?" "Sure," I shrugged. New faces meant new stories, but I wasn't prepared for the instant connection. James had a way of talking as if I were the only person in the room, and those green eyes didn't hurt either. "So, you like the Rolling Stones?" He caught me eyeing his t-shirt. Vintage band tees were everywhere, but I meant it when I said only someone who really digs good music would wear Mick Jagger on their chest. He laughed. "Are you calling me out or complimenting me?" "Guess you'll never know," I teased back. By the end of the night, we were inseparable, discussing everything from our love for old-school rock to names for our future pets. James got my number and didn't wait 3 days to call. The next morning, we were deep in the what of tomorrow, talking about rings and forever. But forever comes with its own baggage. Meeting the parents was on the horizon, and the icy reception at the dinner table was unexpected. Margaret, James's mom, broke the so-called ice with a sharp question about my job at the hospital. It wasn't polite interest, but a harder appraisal. "Yeah, the county hospital up north," I replied confidently. "How much do they pay for that?" Her eyes were sharp, her tone sharper. James shot me a look, but I decided to be upfront. "Well, James does more than get by," she said, interrupting. "So, about this marriage." It was a punch to the gut. I didn't care about money, but the financial discussion had begun. His dad chimed in, and the tone for our commitment was set. Tough, not all sunshine and romance. But it was real, and real was something I could work with. Our wedding was simple, fitting in a matchbox. No fanfare, just him, me, and a couple of signatures. In the beginning, we were a team, tackling life from our small joint command center, his old house. We set up a system, half on everything, shared chores, and even cooking together. There was comfort in the routine, in knowing what to expect when we got home. But reality is a tough customer. 4 months down the line, the teamwork was taking hits. Excuses rolled in, bad days stringing together like a lousy pearl necklace. What was meant to be equal started to weigh heavy on my side. The shared life felt more like a solo gig. 2 weeks of slugging it out on my own, and I finally snapped. I wasn't one to make a fuss, but living like this was unbearable. I confronted James, who walked in with headphones on, oblivious to the mounting tension. "James," I blurted out, unable to hide the annoyance in my tone. "What happened to sharing the load?" He looked at me, genuinely confused or exceptionally skilled at acting. "What are you on about, Lisa?" he asked, pulling off his headphones. "I spent nearly an hour scraping your dried-up yogurt off the coffee table this morning. It's like living with a toddler," I complained. He just shrugged, a nonchalant gesture, as if he didn't have a care in the world. "Chill out, will you? It's just a bit of a mess." "A bit of mess?" I called it quits. I stopped picking up his dirty socks, stopped doing his laundry. It was petty, but I was at my breaking point. Of course, that's when Margaret, his mother, decided to pop in unannounced. The perfect storm. "Look at this place," she said, her nose crinkling as if she'd found a rotten egg. I tried to keep cool, offered her tea, but she was on the warpath. "James, this is no way for a man to live," she said sternly, eyes fixed on me. "I didn't raise you to be living in a pigsty." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Margaret, it's a 2-person job, and I've been doing it solo." "I'm not his maid. You're his wife," I retorted. "A wife keeps a clean home?" She snapped back, missing the irony that I too had a full-time job. I felt my face flush with anger. "And what does a husband do, Margaret?" I snapped back. "He's the breadwinner," she hollered back, missing the irony again that I too contributed financially. Margaret stormed out, slamming the door, leaving me and James in the rubble of our domestic battlefield. James, knocked down a notch at work, came home that day, dumped his keys like they were made of lead. "They're cutting back," he said, the words hanging heavy. I'm off the management track. Just like that, he decided he wouldn't help with the bills anymore. Suddenly, it was all on me. I banged pots and pans like they owed me money. "Why are you making such a racket?" he asked, picking at his beer label. "Someone's got to pay for those beers," I snapped, "and keep this place looking half decent." The ensuing conversation was like a round in the ring. "You expect me to chip in after a day like today?" he shot back. "Yeah, James," I said, not backing down. "Because I had a cakewalk of a day, right?" He had no comeback for that. Just took another swig. "We had a deal. We share this, remember?" I said, standing in front of the blaring TV. "A deal doesn't hold when things go south," he said, not even looking at me. I stood in front of the screen. "So, what? I'm supposed to just smile and nod and keep the house like some 1950s sitcom, Mom?" I glared at him. "You wanted a partnership. Here it is. This is life. Deal with it," he said, thick and toxic words hanging in the air. Ignoring the problem wasn't going to make it vanish. "We're supposed to be in this together, and that means not ditching out when it gets tough," I argued. "I didn't ditch out the job, did I?" he muttered, barely audible over the TV noise. I turned off the TV. "We'll see how long we last, if this is how it's going to be," I said, and silence filled the room, as thick as the dirt I've been cleaning all day. He looked away. I stormed off to bed that night. No more words, none that mattered anyhow. They were all bitter, spat out with more hurt than real heart, but they stuck with me like thorns in my side. The tension in the house was like walking into a wall of ice. Barely a word was passed between us without a sharp edge. James had taken to eating his meals alone, delivered by Margaret with a thud at our door, the plastic containers hitting the wood like the gavel of a judge passing sentence. "So, what are we having tonight?" I asked poker-faced as James marched past me, Margaret's cooking in hand. "Does it matter?" He barely glanced my way. "It's not like you're eating." It was true. I didn't have the stomach for food, not for what was in those containers. It was more than lasagna or stew. It was a heavy dose of rejection served up by Margaret, seeping into every room of the house. Then Granny B called, cheerful and active. I could almost smell her lavender perfume through the phone. A visit from Granny could turn a place upside down. And that's what I sorely needed, a gust of fresh air. "I'm packing my bags, baby girl," she chuckled. But I heard the steel underneath, a resilience that had gotten her through tougher times than this. "I need to see your life." I broached the subject over dinner, a silent affair with the clinking of cutlery replacing conversation. "Granny B wants to visit," I said, dropping the bomb without preamble. James paused mid-bite, his eyes hardening. "Here, stay with us," I nodded, gripping my fork like a lifeline. He shook his head, speaking with his mouth full, forgetting manners existed. "No chance. Margaret wouldn't like it. Since when do we schedule our life around your mother?" The boldness of my words surprised even me. Margaret's voice sliced through from the doorway. "Since it's our house, girl, you just live here." The unfairness choked me like a noose. "Your son and I are supposed to be building a life together, Margaret." She snorted. "A life? You called us a life. Look at you two. I bring him food because someone needs to take care of my boy." James stood up, his chair scraping back like a scream. "And that's how it's going to be. No visits, no changes. It's settled." I looked between them, the mother and son, feeling the outsider tag slapping against my chest. "It's settled because you say so. What about what I want, what I need?" "You need to understand that things are the way they are." James shot back, red flushing his cheeks. "My house, my rules." The ache spread from my heart to my fingertips, but I squared my shoulders. "It's also my home, James, or at least it's supposed to be." He had no answer, just the hard line of his jaw, telling me the conversation was over. But nothing was settled. Granny B would come, somehow. I'd make sure of it. For the first time, I wanted the battleground. If they wouldn't budge, neither would I. There was fight in me yet, and the freeze in the house would need my fire to thaw it, whether they liked it or not. For the third month in a row, James did not contribute his share to our family budget. I was carrying everything, the house, the groceries, and even his damn beer. We had a fight, the last straw. James and I stood facing each other, our words sharp enough to slice through steel. The room felt smaller as the tension grew, air thick with resentment saved up from months of silent battles and unspoken words. "I don't want you as my wife," James said, his voice dripping with finality, signaling the end of everything. It didn't come out as a shout. That might have been better. A shout I could have responded to with fury. Instead, it was a low hiss, a deflating tire's last breath, leaving behind silence that echoed louder than any scream. "I don't want to be where I'm not wanted," I countered with as much steadiness as I could muster, despite the tremor within. He didn't stop me as I started to pack my bags. Each piece of clothing folded felt like a piece of the life we'd built being tucked away, rendered insignificant. I headed to the door, my suitcase a loyal companion trailing behind me. James was still standing in the center of the chaos, the eye of the storm that had hit us over and over until we'd broken into scattered pieces beyond collection. He didn't move, didn't try to stop me. The door closed with a click, much too gentle for the ending it represented. Outside, Granny B was in her old dependable car that smelled of leather and peppermint. Leaning over to open the passenger door, I heaved my suitcase into the back and slid in beside her without a word. "All set, dear?" Granny asked, her eyes soft but her voice strong, a rock in a swirling sea. "Yeah, I'm set," I mumbled, buckling the seatbelt over the hollow feeling in my chest. Granny B didn't start the car right away. "Heck of a fool," she said flatly, adding an expletive that would have made a sailor blush. I choked out a strange chuckle. "Well, it's true." She finally turned the key in the ignition, the engine rumbling to life reassuringly. "You're worth 10 of him, 15 even." She backed out, and we started towards the new apartment. I didn't reply. Instead, I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, watching the landscape blur the same way my thoughts were a jumble of memories and pain. Granny B didn't push with questions or platitudes. She just drove, every now and then muttering something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like curses aimed at James. The cozy rented apartment was in a normal neighborhood, a place where you could blend in and lick your wounds in peace. As Granny hauled my bag out of the car with surprising strength, I unlocked the door to the unknown. "Well," Granny said, clapping her hands together, "time to rebuild, kiddo. You've got a life to claim, and that sorry excuse for a man to forget." I nodded, feeling the very first flutter of something like hope in my chest. Breaking points, I realized, weren't just about endings. They were about beginnings too. Messy, painful, but real. First starts didn't erase the past, but they gave you a canvas to create something new, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what I needed. Granny B was sitting on my threadbare couch, her hands clasped over her knee, bouncing with what seemed like contained energy. Who knew that beneath that floral dress and the wrinkles was a woman with the heart of a Wall Street hustler? "So, you're telling me all the dough I sent you for your meds and stuff, you've been playing the market with it?" I stared at her in disbelief. Granny B chuckled and winked. "Honey, you think I'd let your hard-earned cash rot under a mattress? No way. I've been growing it bit by bit." It felt unreal. I crunched the divorce papers in my hand, knowing that what Granny B had just told me was going to flip the script in a major way. James and Margaret, the perfect couple from next door, agreed to meet us one last time, probably thinking they could offer me some friendly advice on starting over. Margaret opened the door with all fake smiles. "Well, if it isn't the soon-to-be single lady, come in. We were just talking about you." James sat at the dining table, smirking without a care in the world. "Good of you to come by. We need to talk about the neighborhood now that you'll probably be moving somewhere more, affordable." I clenched my jaw, but remembered Granny's news. "I needed this, actually, James. I won't be going anywhere, Granny B piped up. She's got a juicy bit of news. Tell 'em, hun. I enjoyed the suspense, stretching their faces tight. Turns out, I got a little nest egg waiting for me. Granny's been smart with the money. James laughed harsh and loud. What, did you win the lottery or something, Granny B? Granny grinned, sharp as a tack. Better. I turned her spare change into a cool 2 million. The smiles fell off James and Margaret's faces like overripe fruit. 2 million. Margaret's voice came out strangled. Yep, and I don't plan to spend it on this neighborhood. My words felt heavy as I watched their painted-on warmth crumble. Granny slapped a hand on her thigh, triumphant. Ain't that something? Just when you think life's kicked you, it decides to kiss you instead. James started babbling something about how half of this money belongs to him. I burst out laughing, reminding him of the prenuptial agreement I had signed. At this moment, his mother would probably like to go back 6 months to destroy this paper. James and Margaret sat in silence, looking at us with puppy dog eyes. I couldn't help but relish the irony. We didn't linger much longer. There was nothing left to say. As we walked out, Granny B draped an arm around my shoulders. So what's first on the millionaire to-do list? She asked, squeezing me tight. First, I'm getting an ice cream, a big one with all the fixings. I said, the future suddenly bright and wide open. Granny let out a hearty laugh, the sound mingling with the promise of an unseen fortune, now seen and closer than ever. The phone rang again. I was pretty sure it was James trying his luck once more, but this time it went straight to voicemail. I had stuff to sort out and no desire to entertain that mess. I heaved a sigh, looking around my cramped apartment cluttered with memories, too many of them pinned to James and a shadow that loomed like a bad smell. Grandma, with her sharp eyes and a non-nonsense attitude, was right as rain. Why do you even keep that thing on? Grandma gestured at the phone with a scoff, busy shuffling through a pile of real estate listings. I shrugged and tossed the phone on the couch. Guess I'm too soft, squishy as an overripe tomato, she snorted. We need to get moving. I don't want James or his mama knocking on our door trying to weasel back into our lives when we've barely shucked him off. I know, Grams. Thanks. I flashed her a grateful look. So, where to? She slapped a listing onto the kitchen table. It was circled and bold. Here, 2 bedrooms, cleaner air, away from unwanted pests. I skimmed the details. Looks decent, Grams. Any pizza joints nearby. The next day dawned fresh. We were off, the apartment ad in hand, and a skipping grandma step. The listing agent met us at the property, all smiles and slicked back hair reeking of too much aftershave. Welcome, ladies. He extended his hand right at Grandma. She eyed it like it was a dead fish, but shook it all the same. Cut to the chase, hot shot. We're not here for pleasantries. I bit back a laugh as the agent's smile twitched. Of course. He quickly unlocked the door. This way, please. The place was a gem compared to where we were. Good light, clean floors, and the air didn't hold any of James's cologne. Grandma handled it like she was born in a market stall. The price dropped, terms changed. By the time we walked out, the agent looked 2 inches shorter. The move went smooth. Neighbors were quick to say hi, a couple of them inviting us over for beers and a barbecue. They asked about my story, but I kept it simple. I was done letting my past hitch a ride. The new place shaped up nice. I continued to work as a nurse, and Grandma found her corner for knitting and gossiping with Mrs. Ham from next door, who had more sass packed in her tiny frame than anyone I'd ever met. One evening, I grabbed a pizza from the new joint, of course, and headed home. As I flipped open the box, the steam carried that cheesy aroma up, and I couldn't help but smile. So we settled in, me and Grandma, our little team, the taste of fresh starts and thick crust pizza in the air, laughter from the neighbor's yard spilling in through our open window, and a sense of peace finally making itself at home. James and his empty promises faded into the background noise, just like the buzz of the city we'd left behind. I was looking forward, and the view was pretty damn good.